Empires fall from within, very slowly for a long period of time, then all at once. And by the time I finish this presentation, you'll probably understand why I say that. In 1988, Itzhak Adizes published Corporate Life Cycles, which I happened to run across in the late 80s, found it extremely meaningful while I was mired in a corporate bureaucracy that was going nowhere, and neither was I, but that was okay. In this book, he presents a model for a corporation evolving through a typical life cycle based upon 4 dimensions: one, performance, administration, entrepreneurship, and integration, which are pretty much understandable just from the labels. And the way that the life cycle evolves is it begins in courtship. The company, the organization is a glimmer in the founder's eye, and there's a lot of entrepreneurship, but not much performance, administration, and integration. If that then evolves to actually performing something for customers, so it's a real organization, it develops P, and the E diminishes somewhat, but there's still administration, entrepreneurship, and integration. If it doesn't, then it ends up being an affair. There's lots of entrepreneurship and nothing else, and it just dies an early death. From here, the organization can continue to evolve and build up the entrepreneurship, developing new ways to solve problems, but it's still not a lot of administration and integration. If it doesn't do that, it dies an infant mortality with a lot of performance and nothing else. This continues ongoing, so that from here it should develop the ability to administer the operation, so that in the go-go stage, the company lives for its customers and it just solves problems one after another, but the organization is a nightmare to live in because it's complete chaos on an ongoing basis. So to get to adolescence, it has to develop a sense of how to administer the organization, how to manage on an ongoing basis. And if it doesn't do that, it ends up in a founder trap. Typically, organizations need different types of management to move from one stage to another, so that the way that you manage in this environment is very differently than managing to get from here to here. So this continues to evolve, and to get to what he calls prime is where an organization really should strive to be on an ongoing basis. Is it's got a lot of performance, administration, entrepreneurship, not a lot of integration, and if it doesn't get here, he labels it as divorce, and it may die from premature aging or unfulfilled entrepreneur. Though what happens typically is the organization continues to develop and it begins to perform, but it loses its entrepreneurship and becomes more tightly integrated. It sort of rests on its laurels, and it becomes stable. It's milk and its cash cows. As this continues, it goes to aristocracy, where there's a lot tighter integration in the organization, and the performance and the administration decline. Though in the next stage, which he calls recrimination, the performance declines, the entrepreneurship goes away, integration is minimal, but there's a lot of administration. It becomes organization by the rule book, which continues to devolve into bureaucracy, which is just a lot of administration and nothing else, which then leads to death, where there's no performance, no administration, no entrepreneurship, and no integration. And if it doesn't go away, it's because it's supported by some other operation keeping it from falling through death's door, I guess. So this is a marvelous model. Over the years, having looked at literally hundreds of organizations, I have continued to find that the Adizes model is absolutely spot on in terms of diagnosing where an organization or where a department stands on this life cycle and the current problems they have and the problems they should be experiencing and the ones that they shouldn't be experiencing. If you go to the Adizes life cycle page, and there's a link in the musing, and mouse over these stages of the life cycle, there's an extended description of this particular stage in the life cycle. And if you click on the link, it will take you to a more detailed page that gives you a much further explanation of that particular stage of the life cycle. And in each stage of the life cycle, there are problems that the organization should expect to have, and there are problems that it should expect not to have. And if it does have them, then they're in trouble. They shouldn't have them. As I said, Adizes has published many books, most of which I have read, and I have continued to go back to this one because I consider this one to be the best in terms of laying out all of the detail for the stages of the life cycle and the expected and unexpected problems. And in the musing, there's a link to this page in Z Library so that you could download a PDF of the book if you care to. Now, the reason that this is called Empires Fall from Within as opposed to Corporate Life Cycle is a few years ago, I read this paper by Sir John Glubb called The Fate of Empires in Search for Survival, which really captured my attention because he surveyed a couple of thousand empires over a couple of thousand years and determined that the average life cycle for an empire is about 250 years. Some a little more and some a little less, but that's sort of the average. And then he went through and described the way that the empires were founded and evolved over time and then finally perished. And as it turns out, his model maps to the Adizes model extremely well, that the empire starts out as an age of pioneers, an age of conquests, an age of commerce, an age of affluence, an age of intellect, and an age of decadence. And finally, it perishes. And what is evident from reading the paper more than once is that the empires evolve because they grow and are strong, but they begin to rest on their laurels and they become soft and they actually are ripe for death or takeover by someone else. It's why I say empires fall from within, because they lose their ability to grow and develop because they're over here and, they're just happy and content with themselves, and they lose the ability to defend themselves. They sort of decline from within, and that's what happens. Now the paper's not too long, I don't know, 20 pages or so, and there's a link in the musing where you can go and download the paper, which is a marvelous read in terms of the way that it goes through and describes what the things that happen as the empire evolves through the stages and finally becomes ripe for a takeover or completely falling apart. So hope you have found this of some interest, and I'll see you. Well, I was just fascinated by the idea that these two models, which were done decades apart, one of them for corporations and one of them for empires, actually mapped so well together. So I thought it was very unexpected. And as I thought about it, maybe it's not unexpected at all. So hope you found this of interest, and I'll see you in another musing soon. Bye.